I think if I hear you call me Becky one more time, six-pack, I'm gonna pop your tops. All six of them.
Hey, this is Matt once again. Welcome back to another review. This is actually a PayPal review thanks to one of my dearest friends in my life, Efrey. And he asked me to review the 2017 documentary Larry Cohen, which is a really good documentary if you can find to watch. It's well worth your time, especially if you're a fan of this director. Now, for those who don't even know who Larry Cohen is, this is a guy who I've said throughout the years has a talented director, but an even more talented writer. An idea man. Sadly, we lost him in 2019. And that's what kind of made this documentary a bit sad, because the very end of the documentary, where Larry Cohen's talking about, oh, there's going to be a Cohen part 2. You know, Larry Cohen lives again. There's no way you can fit all this in one documentary. Of course, that wasn't planned, and this came out 2017, so it's not anyone's fault. It's just sadly that's how life goes. And then 2 years later, 2019, he passes away. But some of the films he has written and directed includes films like the It's Alive franchise, the Killer Baby films, which I honestly have not seen. I've seen bits and pieces, but I haven't seen them all the way through. Maybe the third one, and I don't even remember much about it. There's 3 of them, not including the remake. But Larry Cohen did the first 3. He wrote the Maniac Cop films. He didn't direct them, but he wrote them. He directed The Stuff, which is one of my personal favorites of his, which is a take on the fast food industry and also just any industry in general, whether it be smoking, whatever, in which, you know, the company will sell you something that they know will kill you, but hey, if they do get profits, are you eating it or is it eating you? And yeah, it could be a play off of cigarettes, alcohol, any of the sort, but in this case it happens to be a killer yogurt, especially in the day and age of yogurts were even a bigger thing than they are today. But I thought The Stuff was very fun, witty. Larry Cohen had a great way of writing his characters to be unique, different, outside the norm, but also for the most part likable. Same with his movies. They have certain realness, certain authenticity to them. He also did the Winged Serpent, which is an entertaining monster movie where you have a monster that's on top of the Chrysler building, and it stars David Carradine and Michael Moriarty. Richard Roundtree, Shaft himself, is in that. The Ambulance, my personal favorite Larry Cohen film with Eric Roberts and James Earl Jones. I love The Ambulance. In fact, this made me want to rewatch The Ambulance again. I love The Ambulance, where Eric Roberts is trying to find this woman, played by Janine Turner from Cliffhanger, trying to find her because one day she collapses in the middle of the street. She goes to the ambulance. She disappears, and Eric Roberts is trying to find her. Love that movie. Other films he did, A Return to Salem's Lot, some film called Deadly Illusion, which I've never seen, but Billy D. Williams is in it. The Private Files of J. Edgar Hoover, God Told Me To, Black Caesar, Bone with Yaphet Kotto from Alien and The Running Man. And also, I wish they had touched on this stuff more, but the films he wrote later on. Like, he wrote Phone Booth, which I love. It's still, to me, Colin Farrell's best performance. They touch on that briefly. Sadly, they don't touch on Cellular, which he wrote, which I love Cellular. That's with Chris Evans. Jason Statham's your bad guy. You got Kim Basinger, William H. Macy. I think Cellular is, I reviewed that on the channel. It's still up. I think it's a criminally underrated movie. Thriller. Again, with a good idea. And that was the thing with Larry Cohen. He was a guy that always had really interesting ideas for his movies that made them, like I said, unique, outside the norm, interesting and witty. Now, it's hard to review a documentary because you go, how much do you want to give away? Because you don't want to lessen the enjoyment of anyone who does watch this. The people involved, it's controlled by J.J. Abrams. Granted, I think he's a shitty filmmaker, but he had very nice things to say about first meeting him when he was 15 years old. So that was still cool. Eric Roberts, Michael Moriarty, Yaphet Kotto, Joe Dante, who is a fan, Martin Scorsese, John Landis, other people interviewed, Fred Williamson, Megan Gallagher, who is also in the ambulance with Eric Roberts, Robert Forster's interview for a teeny bit, Sally. That's another guy we lost. I miss Robert Forster. I wish he was interviewed a little bit more. Greedily enough, I wish they talked a little bit more about the ambulance, but at least you got some thoughts from Eric Roberts and Megan Gallagher, but I wish it was a little bit longer. But they did go through a good chunk of his career. I mean, they talked about growing up as a kid. They talked about he worked on shows. For example, back in the 60s or so, there was a TV show called The Invaders, and he created it, or helped create it, which I did not know. I had heard about that show. I know that show is fairly popular for people who were around back in the day for that show. Didn't know he had a hand with it. They talk about some of his early films, which I have not seen, but I've heard of, like Bone with Yaphet Kotto, which Yaphet Kotto has some words about it. Black Caesar, Fred Williamson, who starred in that, and Hell Up in Harlem, the sequel. He talks about doing those films. Apparently Sammy Davis Jr. was originally going to do that role. It's Alive. Rick Baker's interviewed for a little bit. Talks about how get paid $250 for it, to make this baby that was supposed to be hidden. But then Larry Cohen's like, "Oh, I really liked it. Wait a minute, I thought you said that no, it looks really cool. Let's use more of it." They talk about God Told Me To. Private Files of J. Edgar Hoover. He has a fun story, Larry Cohen, about how he got permission from the president to shoot at certain places that otherwise he wouldn't be allowed. One interesting bit was how he was doing this film called I, the Jury with Armand Assante, and about how he got fired during the middle of shooting it. And then as a personal fuck you to the people behind that, he said, fuck it. The next day he started doing Q the Winged Serpent to get it out at the same time, and Q the Winged Serpent was more successful than I, the Jury. Michael Moriarty, interesting character actor. It's cool that he got interviewed because the films of Larry Cohen that's been released separately on Blu-ray, you don't find a lot of interviews with the actors. Like Michael Moriarty isn't interviewed a lot. So it's nice that he sat down for this. You got to hear some thoughts of him doing Q the Winged Serpent and the stuff. And the Masters of Horror episode called Pick Me Up. That was cool to hear. It was cool to see Michael Moriarty. The stuff. I like the little bit of conversation documentary put with that movie and what it represented. A Return to Salem's Lot, I wish they had delved more into the making of that movie, because I'm not a big fan of that film, but still I'd be interested to know the details of doing a sequel and then going the direction you did to a sequel to the Stephen King movie. And did Stephen King have any involvement? Obviously not, but just any talk of that. Sally, really all they talk about was one actor that was in there, an older actor named Fuller. And Michael Moriarty talks about the, like, and he talked about that movie about that actor. And granted, I'm not a fan of the Return to Salem's Lot. It just would have been nice to hear more other details about that picture. Because it does seem like a weird sequel to Mage, a sequel to Salem's Lot, and then they go a little bit more of a comedic route. Again, like, how did Larry Cohen get the job? Was it just a job for hire? Did he seek it out? Did he have any other ideas before the final product? Nothing. So that's one thing I would like to, hear more about. Sadly, never will. Like, for example, there was this other movie he did, Deadly Illusion, Billy D. Williams. It was interesting to hear. That was supposed to be, there was this series of books of Mike Hammer, but then because he got fired out of the jury and the problems with that, he just turned to an original film with Billy D. Williams, and he told this whole story about being stuck in this harbor the entire day, and the stars trapped over there, and how it led to him being fired. So those are the stories that are interesting. Wicked Stepmother, Betty Davis, a much older actress. Her prime was way back in the day. And that was definitely one of the more interesting stories of the documentary, about how she was in rough shape, terminally ill, but no one knew about it. The film was being shot. How truthfully she left because she didn't like how she looked and how bad she looked. Because even with the footage, I've never seen the movie, but even when you look, you can tell she was in bad shape. Which I don't know why Larry Cohen would have hired her in the first place. I understand that she's an established actress, but no disrespect to the lady, but she did look awful. She looked like she was falling apart because she chose poorly. And the knight over there is shaking his head at Indiana Jones. I mean, he should have just said no in the first place. He just should not have done it in the first place, Larry Cohen. But he did. Maybe because he felt sorry for her, because he liked her as an actress. Hey, Betty Davis, I can understand that. Maybe that's why. But then I'd be like, well, she looks pretty, Anyway. She walked off, and then she said, well, it's because it's a Larry Cohen script, and I didn't want to do it, so she lied about it. And for what I understand, when you look up more info on Betty Davis, she wasn't really the nicest person. Really wasn't. Not the greatest human being. Sad to say. But that was one of the more interesting stories. The ambulance, since that's my personal favorite, I wish there was more to that. Like more info. I mean, you talk about James Earl Jones' character. But they do talk about a little bit of the action scenes. The concept, how it came about. Just being greedy. That I wish was longer. Also, Original Gangstas, which I've heard of, but I've never seen. I did not know there was a Larry Cohen flick. Or I forgot. But Fred Williamson, that was his pet project. The story about how they hired actual gang members, like 100 gang members. And like things went well. Then as soon as the movie was done and left, 2 weeks later, like the army, or the National Guard or something had to come into that town. That's how bad it got after they left. But during the making it, they were professional. See, that's what I mean with this documentary. You get a lot of good, interesting stories. You have a lot of people involved in the movies. It's edited well. It goes by a brisk pace. If you're a fan of Larry Cohen, like I said, there are certain segments I wish were longer, whether it be on the ambulance, even the Return to Sam's Lot. A little bit more info with that. To talk about some of the films he wrote, Maniac Cop doesn't even get talked about. I think that was a mistake, because that's an important part of Larry Cohen's career, is writing Maniac Cop. Those are well-known films to the point it got 3 movies. And at one point, there was going to be a remake. Granted, we don't need one. So it's a bit weird why they were not talk about Maniac Cop, because they briefly mentioned Phone Booth, which he wrote, but They show a picture of Cellular and they showed a picture of Maniac Cop, but they don't talk about them. They could have talked about those movies. I mean, come on. Maybe they did and it was cut out. I don't know. So I have a couple issues, but overall, really solid documentary. A lot of great info. Impressive array of people they got to be interviewed. Like I said, I mean, when you get people who worked with him like Eric Roberts, Michael Moriarty, Yaphet Kotto, Fred Williamson, Robert Forster, and then even people like Martin Scorsese, John Landis, Joe Dante, people like praising your work. Not too bad, not too shabby. So, Team Cohen, great documentary. Rest in peace, Larry Cohen. Your work definitely speaks for yourself. You're a very original creator. I wish more people like you were around at today's age to create intriguing scripts with interesting characters and crazy ideas, but yet certain authenticity and in a weird way. They're over-the-top concepts, but yet they're kind of grounded in a weird way because of the characters and how they react, and the dialogue seems natural between the characters. Just very talented, Larry Cohen. And if you've never seen his films, I would definitely recommend, well, the stuff he wrote, Phone Booth, Cellular, Maniac Cop. Maniac Cop 2, I think, is the best of the three, the second one. But of the films he directed, I would definitely recommend at least To the Winged Serpent, The Stuff, and my favorite, The Ambulance. Those are the three I would recommend the most. I would go like The Ambulance, The Stuff, then To the Winged Serpent are my top three favorite Larry Cohen films that he directed. But rest in peace, Larry Cohen. Thank you for the great work. Thank you for the memories. Thank you once again, Afri, for the request. Thank you guys for watching. Take care. Once again, if anyone's ever interested in joining my Patreon, or you can send me a request via PayPal, it could be a movie review, movie topic, movie news, whatever. Link is down below. Thanks for watching. Take care, and we will see you guys later. Bye-bye.